you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Stamp Anything YouTube channel and another episode of Fanny Friday. On most Fridays other than release week, I am sharing with you a project that I make using the current month's release. And today we are working with Nick, who has the cutest little dragon on his head and he's holding a book. And we're going to be playing with some dies that weren't part of this release, but I feel like made a really fun card that can really be for just about anybody or any occasion. And that's the type of cards I love to create. It's just something that I can pull out of my stash, whether I need it for a birthday or a hello, etc. So before we head over to my craft table, don't forget to subscribe. You will find the links to not only this stamp, but also everything else that I've used today, along with the social media, etc., etc. So without further ado, let's head over to my craft table and I'll walk you through this. Okay, I'm going to start by die cutting. So I am going to be using the Backyard Builder die along with the cardboard box die. And I'm going to be just die cutting some of the hedges or bushes that kind of look like tree leaves. And then the branch. And then I'm going to be using just the small piece from the cardboard box die to cut that out. So I like to stack my pieces of paper so I can get 2 cuts at a time, especially if I'm doing something where I'm using more than one. So that's what you saw me doing there. I'm going to bring in the 3 inks. I will have everything listed in the description box down below. As I mentioned, one of them is green apple. I can remember that. You guys, I have the worst memory. It could be literally right in front of my face and I would remember which one it is. So I'm just going to use a little blender and I'm going to start with the lightest color and then work my way to the darkest color. And I'm just adding a little bit of definition to the outside of these, again, hedges, leaves, whatever you want to call them. And then I am going to just kind of play with the layout. Now, I didn't make you watch me do this because it took a while, but I am using like a piece of aqua cardstock. This is going to be my sky, and I like to do my slimline cards 3.5 by 8.5. So I cut this down to 3.25 by 8.25. And later you'll see me bring in the card base. So here is the piece that I cut out of just some scrap cardstock that's going to be the actual kind of house part of our tree house. And I am just trying to decide where I want things to go, gluing things down, etc. Again, I wanted this to look like he was up in the trees. We never had a tree house. I'm terrified of heights, so it wouldn't have done me any good to have a tree house. But I've always thought they look so much fun. And I love when you're on Facebook or whatever and people share the houses or the rooms or whatever that are in a tree. I'm like, that looks so amazing. But your girl terrified of heights, scared to death of heights. So I will not be getting in a tree house anytime soon. As long as I can't tell that I'm way up high. I'm also scared of escalators because of the same reason. Plus, I kind of fell down one time. And so, sometimes that can be a little, traumatizing for the rest of your life. Anywho, I am just adding in the limbs, adding down the hedges, etc. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this with some... what is this called? Let's see. Dimensional adhesive, some of the Scotch mounting foam. Oh my gosh, words. Because I want to stick Nick inside of it, but I need some of it to be adhered. So I want to kind of make a pocket for him to be in so it looks a little bit more like it's 3D. And once I've gotten just about everything where I want it, I'm going to just take my scissors and I'm going to cut off the edges, and then we are going to get ready to move around. So I am adhering this to a piece of orange cardstock that I cut down to measure 8.5 by 7, scored at 3.5. Here is what colors I'm going to be using for Nick. And feel free to take a screenshot if you want to. Hopefully you can read my writing. If you can't, please just let me know. And I will try to answer. And again, I will have it linked in the description box down below. Well, not linked. I will have them listed down below, but all the other supplies will be linked. So I stamped this with the Stamp Anything Obsidian ink onto Copic friendly cardstock. I like the Hamilton Beach 100 pound cardstock. Word. I think that's right. No, not a Hamilton Beach, Hammermill. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. So yeah, and it's my favorite paper, and I always like to keep something underneath. That way I get a better blend. So I've decided to go with an orange, blue, yellow, green, and brown color story. This is a pretty popular kind of color story when you're doing more kind of, I don't want to say masculine themed. I hate saying something like that, but something that wasn't like pink and purple. This is kind of a more, prominent color story. And I'm starting with his shirt, and then I am going to move on to his skin. So I am doing his skin a little bit more red toned. So rather than him being, an African American or maybe Hispanic, this color story for me leans a bit more Native American. I'm Native American, so I thought this color really looked really nice. So it's 17, 15, and 11, I believe. And I made the shadows underneath the dragon head very prominent because to me that's a mask and it would be covering up that part of his forehead. And I like to start darkest to lightest, and I try to keep it, not so flooded. I don't think flooded is the right word I'm looking for, but sometimes you can get a bit too much ink and then it gets pushed back. So I was doing my best to just kind of make sure that I was blending. So when I go over, or when I'm adding the next color, I go over the other color and kind of drag it out with me. Sometimes that's in a dragging motion. Sometimes that's moving the nib in a circular motion. It really just depends. At the end of the day, I've mentioned before, coloring is so subjective. So you're going to find your own kind of path with that. And again, this works not only with Copic markers, but any kind of alcohol markers. So the Ohanus, a Bic, a Sharpie, you can color with those type of markers and get a decent blend. Not nearly as smooth as these are, but still a really nice blend. So I made his hands a little bit darker just because for me, I was picturing him under like the tree. So his face is a bit more illuminated because I wanted that to be the focal image, like the focal part of the image. But the rest of him I thought would be kind of in shadow. So that's why you may be going, Misty, his hands are real dark. They really are. But in my head, they were in shadows. So I wanted to go ahead and do a blue dragon. So I'm using one of my favorite combinations of navy. So it's B39, 37, and 35. And I'm starting with the darkest color first. And again, I do darkest to lightest. I'm just kind of touching underneath it and then moving up. If you guys want to see some real-time coloring or real-time crafting, don't forget to check out the Facebook group because there are lives there at least a couple of times a week. So people share coloring or stamping techniques, etc. And it's a whole lot of fun. And yeah, it's a fun way to interact with the design team one-on-one along with Anne and Kevin. It's also a good way to get some just motivation and just some ideas on how you can use the stamps and dies, etc. So now that I've laid down all of the blue, I'm going to bring in my favorite green combo, which is YG 09, 07, and 05. And I am just doing the horn and his frills. I honestly can't remember. I have the memory of a gnat. I apologize. But yeah, so I found a really cool, I just Googled like dragon eyes and this little, or this like 3 or 4 different drawings popped up. And one of them was so pretty and so just detailed. I was like, I don't have enough space for that. So I just kind of went with a yellow and I started the inner and the outer corner with the darkest yellow and made the center a lighter yellow. And then I used the same yellow on the teeth. And it wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm going to bring in another yellow to add a little bit more depth. And I forgot one of the teeth on the side, so you'll see me go back and color that in a little bit. So he is not going to be completely, like I'm going to end up cutting part of his lower body off to fit in the treehouse, but I wasn't quite sure how far I was going to come down, so I went ahead and added just a little bit of green to his pants to give him something in that general area. For the hair, you don't get a whole lot of hair, so I'm just kind of flicking a little bit and trying to keep a little bit of highlight, but nothing that's too overwhelming or too bright. So for the books, or this book, I guess, I almost wrote something on it, and then I was like, Misty, no one will be able to see it. Plus, it'll probably be really messy. But I thought he could be, this could be like a really cool sorcery book, or, a book about how to train your dragon or whatever, you know what I mean? So I went ahead and, colored the book black. Before doing that, I brought in, this is a micron brush marker, and I am using that to add a little bit of black in the dragon's kind of pupil area, and then just darkening up his eye area as well. And here I am bringing in the grays to make a black book. And once I've done that, then we're going to get him cut out, and that'll be almost it for the rest of the card. He's so much fun. Like, I love dragons. I call myself a dragon. If you guys have never heard me say that, I'm a dragon. I like sleep. I like glitter. I collect or hoard shiny things. I'm like, I am a dragon for sure. My shiny things are just, stamping supplies or makeup. I got two. So I'm going to be adding just a little bit of adhesive to the front of his body. And then I am adding some dimensional adhesive behind his head. I didn't get the part where I added it behind the big part of his head, but you saw me put a little piece behind his hand. And that's because there is some dimension behind him, so he's not going to lay flat against the card. So I decided to bring in the sentiment from actually Gwen's stamp that we'll use next week. And I am stamping that in blue ink. And I did it a couple of times. And I apologize, this is so far off the screen, but I tried to make sure I was in screen as possible. So I went ahead and just used my paper trimmer to cut that out, and I'm putting it at the bottom, and I was like, I feel like it looked empty. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in some more of these kind of hedges, trees, etc., to add just a little bit more interest at the bottom. And so I'm going to cut the small one up and then adhere it to different spots on the back of the big one. And again, that's just to give it a bit more dimension so it's not so flat and so one-sided. I actually considered using the park bench that was or is part of the Magical Celebrations box down there, but I thought it looked he looked way too high. He looked way too high. So once I get the dimensionals added to the back of the sentiment and get this on the card, that's actually going to be it. I am going to bring in my Nouveau Shimmer pen so I can add just a little bit of glitter to his book and to his mask. And yeah, that is it, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate you. Don't forget to leave a comment letting me know what you think, and make sure you check out the links and all the social media, etc. All right, friends, I will see you tomorrow for a bonus video. Bye for now.